Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
Hey Gwilym, how are you, mate? Not seen you for a little while.
I know. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm really good. I say I'm really good. I injured myself playing squash last week quite badly, and I've been limping. I've torn I can't ever say this right, the plantar fascia tendon or ligament or whatever it is on the base of the foot, and it's quite painful.
Well, like the thing that makes your foot go springy.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah,
Ooh.
It actually felt. So when it happened, I was playing a backhand and I lunged forward with my left foot, and it felt like my arch had collapsed. It felt like my foot suddenly went flat to the floor, and it's agony. Not advised. Don't do it.
Do you make a distinctive sound when you walk now? Kind of flip, flap, like that kind of thing. Oh, Lee's coming. It's all flat foot Lee.
I found the side effect of it is quite interesting. That's because I'm trying to keep my heel off the floor when I'm walking. I'm now getting a lot of calf pain as well. So it's like, oh no, not good.
So it's not flip flap, it's flip tippy toe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
God, I want to see this.
Anyway, aside from my ailments, can I just make a couple of observations about you? You've combed your hair.
No, I haven't. I got my hair cut. If I get it cut short,
you've had a haircut.
It just sticks out in the right direction, so I'm good.
I've never seen you look that tidy.
You know, I trim my beard. Every now and then, every 6 years, I'll do something.
And why have you got upside down jellyfish floating above your right ear?
Why haven't you?
Oh, well, yeah, no, indeed, yeah. I didn't realise it was part of the essential podcasting kit.
Can you, out of interest, can you see me shaking?
See you shaking?
I've got the shakes.
Are you scared? Are you nervous?
No. I'm just coming down off a terrifying experience. I've just taken my first ever line bike ride in London. I've never done it before.
Is that not a good experience?
It's great. Line bike's wonderful thing. Last mile problem solved. But I cycle in London tons, but I've never taken an e-bike before. It is nerve-wracking.
So I have a thing about cyclists in London, and I know that all cyclists say, because I've spoken to enough of them, that those that go through red lights and bother pedestrians that are in the minority. They're not. It's pretty much every single cyclist will go through red lights, regardless of where pedestrians are. I despise cyclists, and I used to be one.
I despise them, and I am one. No, it irritates me because I do stop, and I'm the idiot who's not moving. But what I do love, occasionally, someone will actually say to you, "Thank you for stopping," and it is the most validating thing. It's really nice.
The cyclists never stop.
It's getting worse, definitely. But it's actually quite difficult to stop an e-bike. It's terrifying.
Oh yeah, I've never cycled in London. Never want to cycle in London. It looks terrifying.
Agreed.
Okay, should we crack on with the show?
Yeah.
So a little bit out of our comfort zone today, because normally, I know we're a podcast that spans all of IP, but we do tend to gravitate towards patent and heavy tech stuff. And then occasionally we have an inspiration to get on someone to come and speak to us about areas of IP that are, dare I say it, possibly more interesting than patents, Gwilym. And we've got one of those today. So should we welcome Natasha to the podcast? Hey, Natasha, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you on, and this is the outcome of you and I having a little bit of a conversation on LinkedIn. And isn't it great that the world works like that these days?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So first of all, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
So, my name is Natasha. I am a trademark attorney at Baron Warren Redfern. I work with Jerry Bridge Butler, who I think you've had on this show a couple of times, actually.
We have had Jerry on a couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, so I work with him in the trademark team.
Cool. Interesting thing about Jerry, I sometimes use AI to help me do minutes. And Jerry's name was in a set of minutes that I was trying to do, I think it was yesterday. And I can't remember if it was Copilot or whatever I was using, managed to recognise him as Joey Bridge Builder.
Oh, well, okay. I might start calling him that, actually.
That's quite a complimentary name, though, Bridge Builder.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, what a great way to go through life, building bridges. Anyway, it's we're not on to talk about Jerry, even though he seems to be on the podcast more than me and Gwilym. So Natasha, this came about because I think something that you wrote for SITMA, appeared in, was it in the SITMA Journal and online, about brands that go through something called genericide. Have I got that right?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So I wrote a blog post for the SITMA blog about genericide, which is basically when a trademark or registered trademark slowly over time, although for some it happens quite quickly, becomes a generic term. As you know, a trademark is a sign that companies use to distinguish their products, their goods and services from those of others. So really, it's all about being distinctive and it's all about standing out. But over time, sometimes when your brand is so good and you become so popular, you run the risk of your trademark becoming generic. That's when now the public start using your trademark to refer to just those goods in general. And it's no longer really seen as a trademark that belongs to one company.
Oh, and so I think there are sort of fairly obvious ones that most of us know, but do you want to sort of give us some insight into perhaps the history and the background of this?
Yes, well, I mean, there's not much of a history to it, really. It starts really with just the definition of a trademark. One of the essential functions of a trademark, as I said before, is to allow a business to distinguish itself from others and kind of show the origin of their products. Yeah. So if it can't do that, then essentially it can't perform that essential function of a trademark. So instead of now being that mark that companies that the public use to kind of refer to your business, it's now just that generic word, and that can happen to anyone at any time. And there's trademarks that have kind of become generic as far back as the 1920s, and then there's this, the same problem happening to trademarks today, last year.
Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Is it indifferent?
I think from a trademark perspective, it is a bad thing, really. You want to be successful. You want everybody to know your brand, but really it's kind of a disadvantage of being too successful and too well known, because the lines start to blur a little bit when you're no longer a brand and people think actually your brand is just a product. So you've kind of lost that trademark, really.
I was quite fascinated by the trampoline one because I didn't know that it was known as the rebound tumbler back in the 30s, and then obviously over time trampoline became generic.
Yes.
And so otherwise, it just doesn't make the same, does it? Asking the kids if they'd like to have a rebound tumbler in the garden.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound as fun. There's a lot of marks that's happened to, and when I was writing this blog post and I was having a look at some examples, I was really surprised at some of the ones that I came across that were actually registered trademarks before. Heroin was actually one of them. And that really surprised me. Yes, yeah. Heroin used to be a trademark owned by Bayer. For
keep that quiet.
Yeah, well, a morphine alternative is what the actual product was, and that became generic as early as 1919, actually.
Wow.
So I mean, I nowadays you would never think that comes from one particular source or it's a product really like that, but it once was. And one that kind of came and went really quickly was air fryer. So air fryer is it's a registered trademark owned by Philips, but in the US now it's considered generic because there's lots of different brands that make air fryers. But
I guess that one makes a wee bit of sense because that's quite descriptive, isn't it? That's and that's not just a trademark. That is actually what it does. It fries using air. So I can understand how that happened. But things like Hoover, so Hoover doesn't in any way, shape, or form, in its original sense, suggest that here is a device that kind of sucks up dirt through the process of a vacuum or whatever it might be. And yet it became generic, and that makes less sense to me. Why did that? Why did we come to recognise anything that cleaned carpets as a Hoover?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the perfect example of actually becoming too well known, like so well known and so recognised just for for that product, that people will always just say, oh, just I'm just going to Hoover. I'm just going to Hoover the carpet, or I'm going to grab the Hoover, or I'm going to Hoover the carpet with my Dyson. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of that happening. And a lot of companies, they really try to say this is a registered trademark. These are Hoover vacuum cleaners, and there's lots of different ways they can try to still kind of maintain the mark and try to say, well, no, this is the brand, it's not the product, and they'll keep trying to do that. But it's really hard to control things like that, really. I mean, once it's with the public, they're going to refer to these things how they want to.
Yeah, I guess the public aren't great respecters of brand and IP in that sense, are they?
No. No, and it's always to do with, I think, how language kind of develops as well, and how people talk. That is a very difficult thing to try for businesses to try to control anyway. Just even with things like slang and how people want to refer to stuff, once it's out there, it's not so much in their control anymore. The public will call it whatever they want to.
With the brand creators must just be gleeful that they came up with a word that was so good that it became the word for the thing, like Hoover, which is used, I'm going to Hoover it up. And that's much more, he just hoovered his meal up. It's become a really clear meaning word. And I'm sure the brand people, who I'm guessing are all frustrated poets anyway, I'm thinking I've literally added to the English or whatever language. What a fantastic surprise. The lawyers, on the other hand, obviously are thinking, oh, what have you done? Your word's too good. Does that mean that brand creators should come up with a not quite so good brand? Would that be your advice to somebody? That's too good. That's going to go generic. That word's too good. Come up with a worse word.
I mean, it's really difficult to tell what's going to be too good at the beginning, because you come up with something, it's so distinctive, it's brilliant, like Hoover, it's very distinctive. Google, very distinctive. But, there's no way to really tell, oh, this is just so good that it's going to be bad for us. It's all to do with the success of the business and how that mark and how that brand kind of catches on. How much the public really like it, and kind of the different ways that you can play with it as well, really. So it's hard to kind of tell what's going to be a bad trademark, as in what's got the potential to become generic, because like with the air fryer situation, it can happen very quickly. But like with some of the other brands, some of the older brands, it takes time for the company to kind of grow and get bigger. The brand gets bigger and bigger, and then it's just one of those things that happen. You just become too big for your own good, really.
It also, I guess, be a function of exclusivity. You're the only people, maybe because of your patent portfolio, the only people who can actually make this product, and therefore there's only one. So again, you think, oh, I've nailed this. I've got a really good name, and I'm the only person who can make this product. But it might be that almost inevitably in those circumstances, you end up with a generic trademark because it's the only word for the thing because no one else makes it.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that's a very unfortunate situation to be in. What initially kind of looks like a great situation, you've got this fantastic brand and great trademark, and you've got a patent, so you're the only one that can kind of do it. But then, when your brand becomes generic, but then you're the only one that can do it, and it's difficult because you can try to kind of balance that. You can try to control that, but I guess if you have the patent, then you can continue to be the only one doing it. So that brings in a little bit of balance, because then the other people can't make the actual product for a while.
I got patents in, Lee. I managed it. I got patents in.
Well done. Yeah, I knew you'd manage it somehow.
So as you know, you imagine one's got a great brand, and suddenly one's seeing it being used online, in the papers, on TV, in a generic way. Is there anything you can do about it? Is it too late?
I mean, there is stuff that you can do to try to manage the situation. I think if you kind of see it coming, there's some things that you can do. I would always say for businesses, just kind of be ahead of it before that's a possibility. Try to get everything in place and try to kind of use your mark in a way that in the best possible way for it to not become generic. So you can pair your trademark with a generic word. So I always say, like, Lego is the brand, but if you just call them Legos, then you're kind of allowing room for it to maybe become generic. But if you say Lego blocks, then you're talking about the blocks, but you've made it clear that Lego is your brand. And also you can have lots of different products under the same brand, and that actually makes it a little bit harder for the public to then use your brand to refer to one type of product.
Makes sense.
So with Vaseline, for example, you can have Vaseline the petroleum jelly, you can have Vaseline body lotion, you can have Vaseline hand cream. So when someone says, I need to get some Vaseline, well, what? Which one? Which product?
Yeah.
Although I do think that one's on the brink a little bit, because when people say Vaseline, everyone naturally thinks of the petroleum jelly. That's something you can do. You just have to stay vigilant as well, really. Keep an eye out. If you see anybody sort of using it generically, even if it's referred to in like an article or in the press or in any way, you should try to correct it, try to educate the public that actually this is a trademark, this is the brand. You can use the registered trademark symbol as well, right next to the trademark, to show that actually this is the trademark, especially if you are using it with the generic word next to it. So Lego, registered trademark symbol in the top right hand corner, and then blocks. You can have the trademark in a more distinctive kind of bold font. There's lots of different ways that you can make that trademark stand out. And also you can, if you're licensing the mark as well, you need to make sure that your licensees are using it in the same way. So things like brand guidelines and trademark use guidelines are very helpful, so that it's not just you, anyone else who's affiliated with your mark or using your mark, hopefully with your permission, is doing the same thing. There's examples of quite a few companies actually that do that well. Google actually have a brand resource page, which has the do's and don'ts when it comes to trademark use. So how to use the mark, how to kind of say Google search engine and not looking it up on Google or Googling it.
Yeah.
Which I think we all do. We all say, oh, just Google it. And then people go and Google stuff on Bing. So it's, you can try, but again, it goes back to that point of very difficult to control the public. Biscoff, Lotus Biscoff, have a really good trademark use guidelines page, and that advises people, especially those using Biscoff products in their recipes and things like that. It kind of advises them how to use it when you're advertising these products. So things like when it comes to naming these products that contain Biscoff products, how to communicate that on menus, communicate that in stores, and even photography, how you shouldn't really layer the brand or the mark over photos, that kind of thing. So a lot of companies are trying to do things like that, but I mean, these are not absolute solutions. You just kind of had to hope it's enough.
So you give it a go, and you communicate. How does it come off the register? Who decides it is generic? Do the police get involved at this stage and come along and say, "I'm sorry, you become generic, we're taking you off the register. Does you
trademark police?
The trademark police. Yeah, they got hats with a big R on. So amazing sight when they come for you. No, do they? Okay, probably not the police, but does somebody else who doesn't want you to have the trademark anymore, wants to call their vacuum cleaner over, come along, or does the controller of the patent office decide it's gone generic? How does it come off? How does it become legally generic?
Well, this is actually quite funny because, excuse me, because a lot of generic trademarks can just sit on the register. They can just sit on the register for a while until somebody decides to do something about it. Certainly in the UK, somebody will have to come along and apply to revoke that mark. And the grounds for doing that would have to be that it's now become generic. And then it goes back to not being able to function as a trademark. If it's generic, it can't be a trademark. It might not have been when it was filed and registered, and for however many years it was being used. But if anybody at all wants to come along and have your mark revoked on those grounds, then they can apply to do so. And then it eventually will be a registry decision. Actually, is it generic? You can say, well, we've done this. It's not. We've done this. We've done all of these things and taken all of these measures to make sure that our mark is a trademark and the public knows that it's a trademark. But yeah, the registry, if they decide that actually it is generic, then they can be revoked for that reason.
So despite, you could have made the best efforts in the world, but it doesn't matter if it hasn't, it's the outcome that counts, not the effort. Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And that's happened. That's happened to a lot of trademarks as well. You think you're using it as a trademark, but sometimes what you're doing just might not be enough to educate the public and create that kind of impression that this is a brand. This is not a product. This is a brand. If you haven't done that, then yeah, you do run that risk.
This is a question to Lee. Lee, do you remember rollerblades?
I remember rollerblades, yeah.
They're not rollerblades. They're inline skates. How dare you?
Of course they are. Of course they are. Yeah.
Because when I started, one of my partner's job was to get press cuttings back in the day. It was press cuttings, and he had I'm not going to say futile because I'm sure it's still a very strong trademark, but he had the exhausting job of every time. It was a big fad at the time, and every time somebody said rollerblades, he sent a letter saying, "I think you'll find they're actually called rollerblade inline skates." And I think it was the most awful patch of his career, I think, because it was never ending. I don't actually know how that one panned out, but that was his job for a long time. His stock letter as rollerblade inline skates. Nobody's going to call them rollerblade inline skates. No one's going to say, anybody fancy going out to do some trampoline rebound tumbling? It's just, like you say, Lee, it's really difficult in the real world, isn't it?
Or hey, I need to wrap some presents. Has anyone got a transparent cellulose-based pressure-sensitive adhesive tape?
Things he memorises. Yeah.
No, I've got Wikipedia open at the moment. Other online resources for checking things like this are obviously available.
Yeah, or anybody want a morphine-based product that makes you a bit dreamy? Yeah.
And so one of the questions, and this may be something that that isn't within your area of sort of expertise, Natasha. And sorry about that. I was wondering, in sort of thinking about coming on the podcast, is it something that's peculiar to English language, or does this happen in sort of like with all languages? Is this sort of taking a brand and making it shorthand for something? Is that common just across the world?
Well, I'm not entirely sure about in other languages, but I can imagine it being the case. I mean,
yeah,
with most countries in the world with English, a lot of these trademarks are not just UK or US or EU trademarks. They're international marks. So some of these marks have actually become generic in a lot of countries where they speak lots of different languages as well. So I'm not entirely sure how it would work in other languages. I can imagine it being the same, but certainly English words that were once trademarks and have become generic, it kind of does have the same effect in other countries as well.
And it didn't seem to me, looking at a long list of former trademarks that have been genericized, that's the head of the Wikipedia page if anyone really wants to look it up. It didn't seem to me that there was a distinction between words that were fairly obvious, like air fryer. I mean, that's, as I say, that's describing what's happening as much as a brand, and words that are in no way, shape, or form related to actually what the product is. Like I don't know, like maybe escalator or something. It's just it seems entirely random whether something becomes generic or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. It's the way the public pick it up and how they choose to use it. Once it's out there, that's it, really, isn't it? I mean, one of the ones that I found really interesting, where it's not actually, it's still a registered trademark, but it's quite generic still, is onesie.
Oh wow!
It was just a
Yeah,
silly word.
You know, you would think. No,
Yeah, it's like,
you know, you wouldn't think that at all. It's still a registered trademark, but it's owned by a company called Gerber Children's Wear, and they refer to it as adult bodysuits or whatever, children's bodysuits or whatever. But you know, anyone that buys that sort of product, you call it a onesie, no matter where you get it from. And then there are other ones that are so obvious, like you said, like the air fryer one. I've come across some of these recently, and I'm really surprised as well. The Cashpoint is an actual trademark for.
I'm getting so many pub facts. I mean, I'm going to win the next pub conversation. I've got everything: heroin, Cashpoint, onesie. I'm all over this. This is brilliant.
Yeah, I was really, really surprised by some of these. I think you probably know the ones like Post-it for sticky notes, and Rizzler for rolling papers. But some of these ones they really caught me off guard when I came across them. A dictaphone as well. A dictaphone is a trademark that belongs to a company called Nuance Communications. They're part of Microsoft, I believe. But I mean, I would think a dictaphone is just any product like that. I would call that a dictaphone. You know, even when you're aware of these kind of issues, you can't help it. That's just how we are. That's how we speak.
I love jacuzzi because I think all of us, absolutely. You say the word jacuzzi, you know exactly what it is, don't you? It's a whirlpool bath. So you've gone there. So that's not just a brand or a trademark that's become generic, but that's someone's name. So I think that's the Italian inventor was Mr. Jacuzzi. I don't know his first name, so I should have written that down or something, shouldn't I? And so it's gone from his name to the name of something he invented, and then to something that's generic. That's quite amazing. So he lives forever now in the whirlpool bath.
I was always interested in Wi-Fi, which is, I think, kind of the opposite. Because every now and then I think, why is it called Wi-Fi? And then you think it makes no sense at all, because it sounds like hi-fi, which was obviously short for high fidelity. But Wi-Fi isn't short for some wide fidelity or something. It doesn't actually mean anything. But I think it seems to be the opposite of a trademark, because it seems to have been designed to become generic. So that's an interesting thing as well, is that that's maybe one of the few successes where somebody actually wanted something to be generic from day one and succeeded. Because I think there must be also a history of people trying to come up with words they really thought would catch on, and they'd be really disappointed when they didn't. But that's a different article that you haven't written, so we're not going to test you on that. Don't worry. It's actually more difficult. But I think the branding people. It must be a struggle. I'd be chuffed, wouldn't you, Lee, if you came up with a word and the whole world used it? It'd be great, wouldn't it?
So yeah, no, I think I would, but I also get some sort of sense that if you do that for the purposes of identifying yourself with a particular brand or product, I get the fact that it could be problematic as well. But I think the egotist within me would quite like that.
I've got a quick game I've just thought of.
Oh, go on then. Am I going to like this?
Words that might be trademarks, but I don't know. Right? So mine, I've just thought of it now. Flip-flop. I have no idea. Is that trademark or not? I don't know how we find out. It's a rubbish game. There's no answer. But I reckon flip-flop should be a generic trademark, but I don't know.
Oh, it might be. I'm not sure about that one. But flip phone certainly used to be owned by
That's not a
Motorola.
sorry, Motorola, that's not a trademark. That's just the name of a thing. What's yours, Lee?
So I was thinking about
Ooh.
Bluetooth, because I know the origins of
Viking.
Bluetooth. I know it's Nordic, isn't it, in its invention, and it was wasn't it a king, kind of Viking king, the Albert Bluetooth or some such person. And I don't know then why the kind of connection methodology device, whatever it is, came to be named after such a person. But yeah, so I've no idea whether it's generic.
Carrying on.
Feels like it is, but
Carrying on with
probably
this
isn't. I don't know.
completely pointless game because you don't know the answers. Microwave. I wonder if that was a trademark that became generic. It's a great game. We got like all day.
Poor old Natasha's looking entirely confused.
Words.
Gwilym has invented a game on the hoof that is.
I'm quite enjoying it.
So how do you win? Who wins this?
It's not really a game, is it? It's just silly.
Do you know what? This is the IP version of Mornington Crescent. That will either mean something to you or not, obviously.
Yeah. This is why I never get invited to the pub, by the way, can you tell?
Well, they'll invite you now with all your facts, yeah.
So what's if someone is starting out on the long road to taking a product to market, what's the golden? Is there any golden rule around brand name that someone could follow to try and not find themselves in this position, or is it just a game of chance, like Gwilym's game he made up?
Very similar to Gwilym's game, actually. No, well, I mean, I think you can stay on the right lines with kind of coming up with a new trademark which is distinctive and brilliant and probably might look like it'll catch on and become well known. But as I was saying before, it's really hard to avoid this. This is more to do with the success of the product or the company rather than the work behind picking them up, because really it's to do with how popular you become or how well known you are, and then that's what has the effect on the mark. Really, it's really difficult to then to pick a trademark and kind of bear this in mind when you probably don't even know where your business is going to go. Really, so it's hard to kind of look at this at the beginning, I think.
I thought Gwilym was getting ready to say something.
I'm deep in thought, and I'm just playing my game in my head because no one else likes it. I'm winning, for what it's worth. So
Natasha, we're coming sort of towards the end now. One of my jobs on the podcast is to keep time. So just to remind us that we're sort of like at or close to stopping time. Is there anything that you're sat there thinking, oh, they didn't ask me that one, or I was expecting a harder question? Anything else you want to sort of like get in at the end?
Do I have anything else like that?
If not, let me ask you. This isn't my closer question, Gwilym. I think I've got a closer question. It might not work. I'll explain the closer question in a minute, Natasha. But this is just a general interest. Do you have a favourite generic? I do.
Favourite? Oh, let's hear yours.
Hovercraft. One, because before today, when I bothered to do a little bit of research, I didn't know it was generic. And two, because of course, being from Portsmouth, I do sort of come from and still live in an area where there was commercial hovercraft operating between us and the Isle of Wight. So I found that fascinating. So that is now my favourite generic word.
Oh, nice. I really wish I went on a hovercraft because I went to university in Portsmouth and I really, really wanted to. And the whole 3 years I was there, I never did it. So
I thought you said the whole 3 years you were there, the weather was too bad and it was not operating.
I just never got around to trying it, but I always wanted to. Anyway, that's off topic. But
it's quite an experience.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's somewhere between exhilarating and terrifying.
I might have to go back to Portsmouth just to try that, just to do that. Do I have a favourite? I'm not sure if I have a favourite, but one that always makes me laugh is when I watch American movies or TV shows and they always say Band-Aid. So when you hurt yourself, oh, let's get a Band-Aid. You need a Band-Aid for that. I'm thinking, why on earth do they call it a Band-Aid? It's a plaster. Oh, that's what we call it here in the UK. It's a plaster. But yes, so I think that's probably the one that sticks out a lot to me.
Oh, so does that mean you can have some things that are generic in some countries or jurisdictions and not in others?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
hadn't appreciated that.
Yeah, there's quite a few marks like that. In the US, it looks like generally trademark law in the US is a little bit stricter. Even when it comes to things like maintenance and that sort of thing, there's sort of more requirements to fulfill during the life of a trademark. But it looks to me that a lot of marks become generic in the US, but they're still okay and registered in other territories in the EU, in the UK, and various other countries. But in the US, it seems that a lot of marks become generic easier, I would say, than elsewhere.
And it's interesting that you used the Band-Aid example, because I remember being old enough to remember Band-Aid, the charity fundraising initiative for sort of poverty and hunger, thinking, I don't get it. Why have they called it Band-Aid? That's just I didn't get the play on words because we didn't use it in the UK in the 80s. It just wasn't the thing.
I guess air fryer, because let's face it, it's kind of descriptive, probably doesn't become generic in other languages because they're not going to call it an air fryer. They're going to translate air fryer into the relevant language.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I'm not trying to work out what that is
sense,
in French, but I can't do it because I don't know what frying is. No, I can't remember what air is. Probably, no, I'm not going to say. I have no idea. Friteur d'air. I don't know. I don't care. Move on. Another bad game. 2 bad games. 1 podcast. What's going on? I'm on the roll.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, and I'm now thinking of other names, people's names that have then become related to a product and then become generic. And I'm thinking Biro.
That's true. Well, that's Biro, is it?
Yes, yeah, Biro is one owned by Bic. And we call any sort of pen like that, ballpoint pens, Biros, don't we? So yeah, that's certainly one. And just touching on that Marvel and DC superhero issue, that's one that, to be honest, I didn't know was a registered trademark until this whole issue happened, because I don't think I have ever seen Marvel or DC use it as if it's a trademark. I don't think I've ever seen them do that, because they always use the names of their superheroes, or when they kind of have like the teams, like the Avengers and that sort of thing. You can tell that that's a trademark and they use it in that way. But I had no idea that superhero was a registered trademark owned by them. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, that was where this started, wasn't it? And I found that quite surprising as well. Hence my interest in the article when I saw it. So Gwilym, I'm struggling for a closer. So what we normally do, Natasha, is at the end of the podcast, we come up with generally me, often Gwilym, will come up with some kind of tangential question that sort of relates to things that we've talked about, but takes us down a bit of a otherwise blind alley or rabbit hole or whatever it might be. It's such an eclectic discussion, Gwilym, that I can't think of one. We've already, you had your game that seemed to, you should have saved it till the end.
That's quite a good one, wasn't it? Well, we can play my game again.
Oh, good. Then one more round of your game then.
Oh, right, me first.
You first, though. Yeah. Yeah.
Tombstone.
Tombstone.
I reckon I was a trademark for the Undertaker industry, and they let it go generic.
Oh, I thought you meant the town.
No. There you go. Well, that's a classic example. The name of the town.
Was that gunfight at the OK? That was in Tombstone, wasn't it?
Apparently, they named the gravestone after the film. I'm making it all up, Lee. This is a rubbish game. I just don't understand the rule. I think it's say a word is the name of this game.
Any word.
Any word you like.
I've forgotten the rules too.
I remember. Podcast, and I'll end it there, Gwilym. So, Natasha, I'm not even going to make Natasha suffer having to come up with another one. It's a rubbish game. It's now consigned to the podcasting history of nothingness, I'm afraid. So, Natasha, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute delight. Gwilym, thank you for regaling us with your amazing game. That I'm now going to go. There are a few people in the super office today. I'm going to go outside and play it now.
You are, yeah.
Brilliant.
If you're listening to the podcast, of course you are. Why wouldn't you be? And you've enjoyed it, and you want to help other people find out where we are, leave us a little review, and that makes it easier for people to find us. Thank you both.